we got cord. I have to, I'm still not sponsored. One of these days. That's
the goal, right?
One of these days, yeah. I'm gonna get sponsored, and I had one whole year that I drank Vietnamese coffee from like one location, and I would drink one. They have the sealed top,
right.
So they would have the sealed top. And so the opening of every one of my videos for an entire year was popping it with a straw. And I was like, all right, guys, we're ready for another one. Boom. And I would hit it. And then we'd go into the whatever the meat was. Well, I was doing like 2 or 3 a day every day. So but for the opening of every video, I had to have that opening.
Right.
So I would do 3 meats in one day, and I would drink 3 coffees in one day. I really should have just gave the coffee away.
Yeah.
But literally, I would come in and I would like, oh, okay. So like, it would be like, my cars and coffee first thing in the morning. I'd be like, all right, guys, and bing, and I would drink my coffee. And then after that, it would be like, a midday one, and I would drink another one. Or I'd go to like 2 cars and coffees in a row.
Right.
And then I was drinking like 3 a day on Saturday and Sunday. And I did it for like a whole year, and I was like, no, I have to switch. So this is my new habit. Again, maybe one of these days I'll get sponsored. So anyways, that was a super long intro to a really fun conversation we're gonna have today. So if you guys have been on my channel for a while, I'll do car reviews, I'll do owner interviews. I cover all the cars and coffee events. I do all that kind of stuff. So you guys know that. This is definitely going to be more like a podcast.
Right.
And what's going to be fun about this is we're going to talk a lot of history and a lot of kind of where the industry used to be, how the industry grew, and basically got us to where we are today, and kind of that in between where it was a little funky.
Yeah.
But anyways, so if you guys haven't seen my other video, he was nice enough to escort me around Brothers Garage, do a full review of Brothers Garage, and I'm gonna let him introduce himself, where he comes from, who he's part of, because this is all again huge history. So if you would.
Sure. So my name is Harry Nguyen. I am from Washington, D.C., in specific Fairfax, Virginia. I am one of the creators of Team Emotion. If you guys don't know, it's a show team up and down the East Coast. We try to keep it East Coast. But if you guys are on the competitive show circuit, you've definitely seen my face and some of my team at the bigger shows. Used to be at all the shows, but now we just concentrate on kind of the bigger shows.
Yeah, and you guys definitely represent. Like really, like it's one of those. So it's one of the things I always like to talk about as I go through, especially like the bigger events and the bigger meets. Is I really enjoy when a team comes out. They have their Nabori flags, they have everything else, all their cars are in a row. There's sometimes 3 or 4 of them, there's sometimes 6 or 12, or sometimes they take a whole row and there's like 20 of them. Mm-hmm. I love it. You get to see the personality of each one of those cars. You get to see the personality of that club too, because a lot of times the club kind of veers one direction. They may be a static group, they may
right.
And then they'll have one car mixed in here or there, but for the most part, I love seeing that. And I think it really brings a lot to the larger events when you have 3, 4, 6 different, really big car clubs that come out and they represent with, whatever it is that they do. So I've now that I'm back on the East Coast, I've now been to a couple of the bigger events.
And you've seen us, right?
Yeah. And like, I mean, you'll see it in one of the videos where I literally go, hey, this is the best row. This is I
think that was you did a Week Fest New Jersey.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was literally your row. Like.
Yeah.
I was like.
I think that at that event we have. So we're based up and down the East Coast.
Yeah.
Right. Like.
Yeah.
Boston, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina. Most of us are right here in the DMV, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. You know, and I have one guy out in Canada, in Vancouver.
Oh, wow.
You know, and you know, that's trial and error, right?
Yeah.
So we try to bring like this West Coast guys, and we want him to come east. We understand he can't, right? That's a lot of money.
It is,
right? And
it is.
The ultimate goal is like, hey, like we wanted to be a collective, right?
Yeah.
And show out one spot. We know it can't happen, right? We've been doing this for 20 years. This year we celebrate our 20th anniversary, and for me, to start off with 4 other guys, so we started 5 guys. And it was just like a hobby, right? Like, hey, like we're a crew, like let's go to this show, or let's go to, you know, Tower Records, and let's go like look at magazines, and go home on AOL and let's chat about cars, right? And then, you know, even
listen to that dial-up sound.
Yeah, right. And then even you know, oh, I need help putting my intake on, right? I need help lowering my car, right? Without you know, a facility, right? We're doing this like back in the day.
Well, that's how we all started. We all started in somebody's garage, literally in somebody's garage.
Yeah.
You know, we all had a homie that had, you know, either at that point they lived with their parents, you know what I mean? And it's like we would get access to the garage, or at least the driveway,
right?
And stereos.
And then mom and dad are like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
10 o'clock at night, you're
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
So,
and you're out there still wrenching and making noise.
Right,
Everybody's got their little flashlights. And, oh, man, it was always something that was supposed to be like a half-hour job that was like 3, 4,
days.
5 hours. Yeah, exactly.
This part's broken. The shop, and there's nowhere open right now, right?
Yeah, and then you're stuck, or you got to order something, or eBay something. I don't know, like whatever it was back then. Like it was hard to get stuff too.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
especially if you had something like.
Hard to. Well, back then it was, you know, whatever you can get, right?
Yeah.
Substitute that part until that part gets here, right?
Yeah.
So let's just say, like back in the day, like RS Akimoto, right? Oh, you got the intake? Well, mine's on order. Well, we'll just get this, like whatever equivalent to APC was, right? It was just some like random intake arm with the K&N filter on it. Yeah, we'll just throw it.
Well, I mean, that was even before like AutoZone, you know, like
before
like
AutoZone
any of those, like they all added like little arms and stuff, and like technically you can go and get some stuff that gets you by,
right?
You know, or you know, it's what you're starting to do, and that's fine too.
Right.
That's fine too. But no, it was even before any of that. Like you could not go and get something. You'd have to go.
There were specialty shops.
Yes.
Just for kind of like vape shops now, or sneakers, like those sneaker boutiques.
Yeah.
Like back then, like everyone had like car shops.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh, Clear Corners, right? Remember Clear Corners? And you know, after that it was like
all the LED bulbs that didn't work.
The HID style bulbs, right? So you know, so there's a lot of specialty shops out there, which was cool, right? Because then that's where you could go when you flip through the magazine, and you know, when you're flipping through a magazine back then, maybe even now, right? When you're online, you're like, I wish I could see that part, like touch it and feel it.
Yeah.
That's when you would go to these shops and they would have it, right? And so you're like, okay, I want now.
Well, that's one of the big changes for the performance shops now. Because the performance shops don't stock that stuff anymore.
Right.
I mean, really, very rarely do you go in and you're like, oh, you know, I want this exhaust, I want this intake, whatever it happens to be. Very rarely do you go in and they're like, yeah, cool, and pull it off the shelf.
Right.
Like they're like, cool, I'll order it, it'll be here in a week.
Right. I mean, I think even shops back then were the same way, right? So like, I remember a shop that I worked at, like we stocked, after Fast and Furious, we stocked APR wings and aluminum wings, like out the wazoo. Like we would build them, like we would have workers build them, and then that way when the customer came, it was like, hey, here's the wing. You need to install it, right? So that way we had the wing already built, and then we just drilled
and everybody just kind of drilled holes and ran
ready
it.
to go, right? But as far as like exhaust, like I was fortunate to work at one of the shops here locally that was a distributor for like a lot for Volk Racing, for Gretty, for Tanabe, 5 Ziggin, right? They did all the buy-ins. So I was lucky to work at a shop like that. So we had, you know, for the more popular brands, we had those in stock. But like body kits, like how big are they? Like who's going to stock like 6 bumpers, right? In a storefront, like.
And then I guess until like I guess Nopi got popular and they started doing parts, like they started stocking parts and you could kind of get them, especially on the East Coast because they were local, they were, you know, like
Georgia,
Atlanta,
but
they were Georgia.
But still 2-3 days.
But that was probably, I don't know, the fastest you could get like a Wings West kit or something like that, you know.
And they were just drop shipping. They didn't have it either. They
that's true. That's true.
Like,
that's
it
true.
was crazy, right? So same thing. So, you know, the shop that I was working at, like we would stock whatever we needed to stock to do the buy-in.
Yeah.
And then from there, we were real strategic on what we brought in. Obviously, back then, hyper white lights, side markers, Momo shit.
Those were never ending. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like even I remember when the remember the tire light, spinner light, and the hood,
Yeah.
LED. When I saw that, I was like, am I really going to carry this?
So like I'll admit it. Okay, like I'll admit on some of that stuff. I had the lights on the washer sprayers,
Right.
on the hood.
This was the hood sprayers.
And I had those on, and we went. Me and my buddies, I think we went to like the batting cages or something, and we were coming home, and a cop pulled me over, and he's like, "You can't have those lights," and I was like, "I'll take them off right now if you don't give me a ticket." And I literally went and opened up the hood and just yanked the wires, and I was like, "Is that good?" And he's like, "Yep." And I was like, "Cool, no tickets."
Yep. So I mean, back then, like it was all about lighting. Like I don't even remember
Lighting and stereos. Lighting and stereos.
Yeah, so that's
Like,
where, I mean, obviously that's where I started.
Oh, yeah.
I know we talked in a previous video, and I was like, you know, like when I started building, it was car stereo first,
Yeah.
and then everything after. Nowadays, it's if we even get to car stereo, right? I mean, there are builds that don't have it. Some of them don't need it, right?
No.
Like some of these are race-inspired builds, so they
Yeah.
don't need car stereo.
Yeah.
But you know, back in the day, like car stereos were.
Well, like like one of my first cars, like so, I would say that's one of the things that got me started, just period, into cars was the car stereo side of things. So all my buddies, you know, we'd each get a car somewhere down the line. We'd all have a car, and that always seemed like our first thing. So you swap out the head unit, you get aftermarket head unit.
You remember
right?
the Pioneer with the dolphins in it?
Oh yeah,
that was the one to get.
Oh
that
man,
was the one to get.
I ran.
Kenwood. Pioneer.
The Sonys would have little dancing. I ran the Alpines for a while. Everybody wanted an Alpine.
Right.
Like an Alpine was kind of like top shelf, and it was always that expensive one. And then, but I don't know. I honestly ran Sony a lot.
Right.
And then after that, it was like, oh well, how big of an amp? How big of an amp? So they had like, oh man, they weren't.
It was PPI. It was Fosgate had the punch amp.
Yep.
But PPI had that.
They had the one. Big. Yeah. They had that one, and everybody was like, "Oh, well, how much are you going to run?" Well, and they always took peak numbers, which was hilarious to me. So they're like, "Oh, it runs 6,000 watts," and you're like, "No, it runs like 100 by 4."
Yeah, right.
But you know that for that split second, it'll give you 1,000 or whatever it was. But I remember one of my first cars. I ran I ran a single 12. I ran a single 15. I ran 310s. I ran 310 JLs, okay, because that was the thing, all right? But what I did was I cut the rear deck of the car, okay? So where you'd have like your 5 by, you're like 6.5s up in the rear deck. I cut holes and fit 310s going across, and then I built a box going down into the trunk because
like a reverse box.
Yeah, exactly. I always like sealed enclosures.
Right.
Like for me, a lot of guys like the ported and everything else. I always like the sound of like
sealed,
a really tight sealed.
Yep.
Yeah. So I ran 310s on the rear deck that way, and then I'll embarrass myself with some of this. I mean, we all do this, okay? So like you guys will throw it in the comments, but I had one of the 10s go bad. Okay? So then, yeah, of course, right? So then one of the 10s went bad. I ended up pulling the 10, which then gives you a hole. Well, you can't have a hole, all right? But I didn't have another 10 to put in it yet. So you remember those big CD cases we used to get? And it had 4 CDs, and it would hold like 120 CDs.
Right.
I would put that on the rear deck, and it would seal. It would seal until I took a corner, and then it would slide down, and then I'm like, and it would go back to, and then I get bass again. But
dude, this is so crazy, right? So if we're talking car audio, like we got to do another video. I got another OG who owns the shop. You were at his open house.
I was at the open house. Yeah.
He is a guy that should be in this conversation.
Oh yeah,
we'll do another one.
Yeah, we'll have to do because that's hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, and we all did it.
Yeah,
we all did it. But like I said, that was that time. That was my introduction to kind of wrenching, I guess. But on on the other side of things. But literally, we would pull the interiors out. We would. I don't know how many cars. Okay, it's been long enough that none of my bosses are still around from where I used to work. But I mean, I used to work midnights, and I don't know how many interiors we ripped out of cars to run wire.
Power, yeah.
Yeah,
You know what's crazy is that back then there was no Google.
No.
Right? There was no YouTube.
No.
Remember Haynes manuals?
Yes. None of the manuals. Like nothing. Like now you can't find any. You do that or like a Chilton's or a Mitchell or whatever they were. So
I bought a Haynes manual to learn how to do everything on the Civic. So I was like, everything's in here. So.
And it was, and you're like, okay, cool. Let me try and do a tune-up.
Right. Like, no.
I don't know how many fuses I fried and everything else.
That's all in the learning process, man.
And it's like, oops. And I was like, did I fry one? Yep. Yeah. Okay. Does the amp still work? Oh, it does. Okay, cool.
Yeah. That's all in the learning process.
But anymore, like, I don't know. I'm still into stereos.
Yeah.
Like, I'm still into having, like, I don't have to have the crazy anymore.
Right.
It's different if you're building a show car, if you're building something. But, like, anymore, if I have a single 10, like a single 10 I'm okay with.
It's so crazy, right? You say this, right? And I think we're in the wrong video for this, but it's so crazy because the amp, remember we're talking about the big amp, right? Have you seen the amps now?
Yeah. Okay, so well, don't worry, we won't just talk about car stereo stuff, but on my last 3 stereo setups where I still wanted audio, but I didn't want the full stereo. And even on my new car, I'm going to do this, which I haven't discussed yet. It might be out by this video, but I'm not going to say what.
You're very lucky to get that car, by the way, because
I know the ports are all messed up right now.
The East Coast port. So
the way
congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you. I'm super excited. But what will happen in this is I'll run I have experience with the Alpine, so I'll probably start with that. Alpine has like their little hidden amps. They're like this big,
right?
They're like 45 by 4, or you can get one that's like 250 by 1 or something like that. But they're like this big.
You know what? You might not even want to do that. Sony.
Okay.
This is a plug for Sony. Sony's been sponsoring me on a couple of my builds here and a couple of my team members' builds.
Well, I might be doing Sony then.
For the last like 7 years, right? They actually have a head unit, right? Okay. That doesn't need an amp. It's got enough power in it where it can control your interior speakers and a 10-inch woofer without an amp. Okay. So you just put in that head unit, get the speakers, and get a 10-inch woofer box. And
it's all built in.
It's all built in.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I have that in my daily. So.
Okay, we'll talk about that. So what I normally do, I had it on, I had a 510. I had a Bluebird for a little bit, and I still wanted some audio in it. So like what I would do is I would do that little hidden Alpine, do a little Bluetooth module to it, tuck it up under the dash, and it's gone.
Right.
And it's gone. So, but every time I get in the car, it just connects to my phone, and I'm like, oh, there's my audio.
Right.
So, the next car will probably be that way because I want it to look like there's no stereo.
Right.
But I drive up and down like
Yeah, as much driving as you do, man.
Yeah, I need some audio.
Yeah, you need some audio.
And unlike the S2K, like I don't want to have earbuds, but those earbuds saved my life in that S2K. My goodness. But yeah, so. It's funny because, like I was saying, that's where we started.
Right.
Okay, that's where we started doing things, and then from there, then it would progress. For me, it went from there to like suspension, but not suspension the right way. I mean, it was the suspension that you could, Initially, it was. Did you do springs into Kegos, or did you do ground controls? Ground controls.
You did ground controls.
So first I cut them. Okay, so like first I had the car a week. I tinted the car, and then my buddy was like, oh, I got a friend that'll just cut the springs for you, and again, this is we all did it something like this at one time or another.
This is like 1996.
Yes, yeah, right there, pre 2000, pre 2000, yeah, 100%. And I went in, and it was some like random like Midas type shop, and the dude had a torch. And he literally cut a ring off. We dropped it down. He goes, is that low enough for you? I goes, no, cut another ring. Bing. And I just went bouncing down the road afterwards. But after that, for that car that I had, the only thing that came about later were the ground controls, and they were the sleeves.
Right.
So they were the sleeves, and they had like these weird like little O-rings or something to try and make up the space, because they were definitely an oversized sleeve. But then I ran ground controls and ran those, and that pretty much put me through my first car. I put some like huge 17-inch Inkies on it.
Heavy.
That must have weighed.
Heavy.
Oh, they must have weighed 80 pounds with the tires. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. Inky it was like Zoku. Inky. Oh man, I remember there was an ad that had the 3 wheels, and everyone was like, I gotta have that.
And that was me. That was me. Like, I had to have them. They weighed an insane amount, and I think heavy. I was still only running like, I want to say it was like a 205/40 on it. Like
205/40, yep.
You know what I mean? Like a 205/40 17, and it was a super heavy wheel.
Yep.
That car, like, I mean, it gripped, but the car made no power back then. So like, but then after that, once I totaled that car, whatever. It's been a couple cars that way. Then I was in like CRXs, and I ran through CRXs. Like I still want a couple. Like I've already admitted that the car that came in isn't a CRX, but I am honestly looking. I need 2 more. So I need a glass top.
Good luck.
I know. I need a glass top SIR, and then I need a non-glass top. Because the non-glass top I can drive, and I won't feel bad about driving it. The glass top one is going to be one of those
keepsakes.
Yeah, it's one of those like pretty much OEM
plus
OEM, you know, with that
OEM restoration and
and that's another thing. Man, we're going to skip all over the place. The new generation that's like super into, especially like the Hondas and stuff. It's almost like a resto mod. It's almost like a resto OEM, but it's not pure OEM. It's OEM plus, but it's almost like a resto mod now. Like you know, the old muscle car type of people would do. Now we're doing it, but we're doing it with Hondas, which is awesome.
Right.
Because we're saving them.
Right.
You know, instead of just destroying them. Because we still, you know, as long as we have fun with them, I guess is a good way of looking at it. But yeah, I need a warehouse. I need something this size so I can just start storing cars.
Good luck, man.
I know, like that's. So I need a couple of those. It's that Gran Turismo list.
Of course.
It's So for our generation, we came up with like the original Gran Turismo.
Original.
That was before Forza. That was before any of that stuff. Okay, before Need for Speed. You know, any of those.
It was just remember. I hate referencing the movie. Remember Fast and Furious when RJ's in there? Like,
that's it.
Yeah, that was it.
And it was super pixelated. It looks like these watermarks right here. Is what it looked like. But okay, so I don't mind referencing it because it did good and then ended up doing bad for the industry. Like it really. So we all know, and the first couple that came out, well, not the second one. Let's skip the second one. The second one was, you know, but the first Fast and the Furious, the third, maybe the fourth. We're starting to push our luck, but you know, the first one, Tokyo Drift. I think were the 2 really big ones that we wanted.
Yeah.
And they pushed the industry.
Yeah.
They definitely pushed the industry.
I can't even tell you. Like I said, I was working in the shop. I was building cars before Fast and Furious came out. After that movie came out, people didn't understand how much NOS could damage your motor.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But at the shop I was working at, the amount of aluminum spoilers I sold and NOS kits.
Yeah.
Right? No, I didn't stock NOS kits back then, because back then it was Jags and what was the other one that oh man.
Oh, it's not.
It's in all the ads. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Like Summit.
Summit. That's what it was. It was Summit, and they had it, right? And so it was like, oh, whatever, right? You can get it, but no one ever stocked it, right?
Yep.
And the amount of kits that I sold after that movie came out, and the amount of aluminum sport, like APR had the spoiler.
Yeah.
But you had like other brands, Tenzo R, that had cheaper, right? Taiwan, whatever.
And then you had the off ones.
Yeah.
And then you had the off ones that were really off.
And then when you buy it in bulk,
it's
super cheap, and then you sell it for the same price as the APR, right?
Yeah.
That's how business works, guys.
That is how business works. 100%.
Okay? So the amount of money that a car shop made back then after that movie, it was insane.
Yeah.
Insane.
And what was funny was, like, okay, so there's definitely been a really good progression with the way cars are modified, with the way things are done. Because back then, I mean, whether or not it was done at a shop or it was done in your garage, literally you would just drill a hole and put a nut and bolt through. Sometimes you put a little silicone, but a lot of times you didn't even do that. Like, you literally just put it through.
Right.
And then, you'd eventually pull it off and there'd be rust, and, or it would rain hard enough and, you'd go down into the trunk. But that was the industry. That was the way we were doing it back then.
Right.
It was just, whatever we could slap on, fit on, whatever we could do. And that ran us almost to the 2000s.
Right.
And then in the 2000s, we really started doing body modifications.
Right. So then body modifications came in.
Yeah.
Right. And that's when, like, when I talk about, you go to Tower Records, not even around anymore, right?
Nobody knows
Tower
about
Records.
Yeah.
Bookstore, magazine shop.
Yeah.
We talk about magazines, right? Super Street, Import Tuner.
Yep. You go right down the line.
Yeah, go right down the line, and you just flip it. You just go through it, and it's just like, oh wow, like that's a Civic. What front end is on that, right?
What front end? What tail lights? Right. The doors don't look right.
Yeah.
There's no handles. There's handles. What handles are those off of?
And then who could do that work, right? So or who was willing to do that work, right? Because now I look at it and I'm like, man, the guys that did my work, like, let's be honest, man, a body shop, that insurance work, in and out work, is what pays their bills.
Yeah, not that.
That custom work?
No.
No way, dude, right? That's passion project, right?
There were, until you got into the paint, they would make money. The body work, they really didn't, the body work kind of got slapped on a lot of times. But the paint, I mean, so coming up through, I guess around the 2000s, we could say, when Nopi Tour for the East Coast.
Right.
The Nopi Tour was really big. They had, it was like 2002 or something, when they had the Hot Wheels Civic, the red one, that led the tour. They had Dustin's Mischief MX6. Right. The yellow one with like...
Who was on Midnight Club?
The Midnight Club. It was the Midnight Club cover car.
Right, he actually recruited cars locally in DC to do Jin's video.
Yes.
Learn Chinese, right?
Yes.
I don't even remember that.
Yes.
Yeah, so one of the guys that I started Emotion with, he had a DC2 Integra, JDM front end, and Lambo doors. It looks just like my Civic, but it's actually an Integra, right?
Yeah.
Turbocharged with Lambo doors. And of course, his car was all lit up with Lambo doors, so they're like, up front, right? So his car is actually in that video, like up front.
Oh, that's hilarious.
With his spark.
I'm gonna have to look that video up. I'm gonna have to look that video up because that video, that was played on repeat, okay? And then everybody wanted to see him, but that was like a one-hit wonder. He didn't really do too much.
Yeah.
He did that, did a couple little like movie plugs. And
I think he went back overseas, I think, and did really well.
Is that where he did? Okay.
Yeah, that's where.
Yeah, because we lost him over here.
Yeah.
We lost him over here. Yeah. But that was, again, we go back to music because it goes.
But what's crazy to me is that even after, so we talk about the body mod era, right? Like, to me, that's very important, right? So the way the scene progressed to me is that, cars did that and it was great, right? I think that showed a lot of creativity, right? Like a lot of creativity. So now when I go to shows, right, I get asked a lot, like, what's the difference between now and then? Now everything's like clean, right?
Yeah.
Like the builds are real clean. Nothing against that. Back then it was body mods, right? And I like that. Like when I go to a show, I like to see that creativity, right?
So the 2000s, I don't know. I mean, I commented real quick on the other video, but I don't know how many Supra taillights we destroyed during that era. But
on the right car, it looked good.
They looked good on so many cars.
On the Integra, on the DC2,
Integra, and it looked
perfect, right? And then on the Integra, it looked perfect. I was like, man, that.
And then other ones that didn't fit quite right. Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, they were putting them on CRXs. They were putting them on the back of a CRX.
Right. Anything that was like
they kind of had that rectangle like tail light.
Anything that they could reshape, right? Yep. Yeah. So, but that era to me, I loved it because it showed creativity.
Oh yeah.
Now when you go to a show, it's like how many Spoon Civics can we see? How many Mugen, FK8s can we see? Like, right? So nothing against that. It's cool. But like, I remember back in the day, like going to a show, seeing.
Well, they were molded.
Right.
You had a ton of molded body kits.
Mm-hmm.
You had a ton. Oh, all the. It looked like clouds and everything. They would put all the
cotton. Okay.
All the cotton underneath.
All the wire loom. Okay.
But that was it. That was kind of the display. Was how much of a display can we put on? How much of a show right here for my car can we put on? You know
exactly.
And they would bring. They brought some of it from the muscle car era. They bring the mirrors. They bring this. They bring that. They bring the strobes, and they'd make a scene. Or how many fish tanks did we see?
I mean,
fish tanks and waterfalls.
You know what? I mean, and it was actual fish tanks and waterfalls.
It was.
But now I joke, right? Like I'll go to a show now, and I'll walk around.
Yeah.
And you just see fish tanks in the headlight, right? Just because the headlight has a hole in it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, like who lit the fish tank, right? Like I thought we left that back in the past, right?
Yep.
But
But no, that was the way it was done. Like that was again, that's part of that creativity.
Right.
That's part of that whole section where we keep going back to it, but like the stereo stuff, the trunks and everything else, there was so much molding, so much fiberglass, so much everything. And it was who could design a pod, who could
remember
Alpines demo cars.
Yeah, or Fishman.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that? Like center drive, the Alpine car with the center drive?
With the center drive. They did the Mini, they did like an XB or something where it extended out and they had a whole DJ. But they literally, everything inside was fiberglass.
Right.
It was all fiberglass. They had a million gauges.
I wonder what those cars look like now.
I know.
You know what I mean? Like,
I would love to see them I would love to see them like pristine. I know they're not going to be. There's no way it made it that.
Right.
I mean, so like an example, like when I was doing the private tour at HKS in Japan, they have two different sections of demo cars. They have their active demo cars that are downstairs, and then they have their kind of historic ones upstairs. Those things look so bad, and I feel so bad for them.
Beat up. But they were track cars.
But
right?
they were track cars. But they we even talked to the one person that was doing the tour for us, and we're like, oh, how often do you guys take these out? How often do you start them? And he's like, honestly, they probably wouldn't even run, and it's so sad. But like that's what happens with those demo cars.
Yeah.
They just rot. They just sit. They just sit away and they don't have the love that they need.
Right. So a funny story based off that, right? So when I brought my car here to Brothers, right, as we were getting ready for Honda Day, I was like, oh, well, let me just update some stuff, right? Some of these bulbs have been changed or whatever. Yeah. So I'm going through it, and I'm like, oh, this turn signal's out. So when I went to turn the harness, right, the 3 wires ripped right out of it. I mean,
it's funny, but not funny.
Right.
But that's an age thing.
Right.
That's an age.
Right?
Yeah.
So you don't realize that, right? So I'm like, oh crap. So we had to resolder all new wires in there. So yeah, you're right. So when we say that, it's like that car, that Civic was sitting in my garage literally for 12 years.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's not like it was abused. It was covered. It was sat. But that's one of those things when.
Just age.
It's just age. It's like us. I mean, we just it hurts now. We stand up and we're like, oh,
Yep.
But anyways, it is. That's how it is getting old. But so we went through the heavy body modifications.
Yep.
A lot of molded, a lot of fiberglass, a lot of just slapping Bondo on cars. Now some of them looked awesome.
Right.
Really, some of them, and back then it was Hot Import Nights. That was kind of the big show. That was the big party, everybody go to. Nopi Tour once a year was big. Everybody went down to Atlanta for that, and it was either a drive up from the south or we go up. Even though I was here in Virginia, D.C. area, I would drive up to Jersey. And I would meet in Jersey. We'd do the overnight, do the stops, and do the whole ride all the way down. And one of the things that was incredible for me about that was we would be on the highway. A couple times we'd get police escorted, but a lot of times we wouldn't. We would run 2x2, and there would be 200, 300, 400 cars running 2x2, and they had their lead cars that were supposed to be keeping a decent pace. You had those that ran ahead. My boy knows because he got that ticket that he never paid. But anyways, but no, like I wish I still had my photos. And this was all back in film. This was before digital.
For sure.
I was driving. You guys don't do this. I was driving with my knee. Okay.
This is before detachable steering.
This was before all of that. Okay. I was driving with my knee, and I was like half on the shoulder, shooting out my window, shooting rollers by myself. And this was way back in film, trying to get them as they would pull up. And I was like, bam, bam. And I had the best photos back then. And I mean, I don't even know where they are anymore. Yeah. I had a buddy of mine send me, you guys don't know about this either, but send me like an old CDR, like an old CD of one of the old Nopi tours. And what I would do is I would shoot them, and I would back in the day get them crossed over digitally because they weren't digital. And then I would make a CD for my buddies. And I'd be like, here, I did Nopi tour, and I would send them one.
Wow.
And it would have, like 1,000 some odd photos on it.
Right.
But it's funny how things don't change. Like I'm still, I mean, they do, but they don't.
Right.
Like there's a lot. I still go to shows. I still shoot photos. Now I shoot video. Back then I tried to shoot video, and it was all weird camcorder stuff. And it was all weird camcorder stuff. And it never looked good.
Yeah.
But the retro, if you have that stuff now, it looks so cool. Yeah. It's like that old, 8mm or whatever, they went from big VHS down to smaller ones.
Right, the
little handy cam. But man, I should have kept all that stuff.
I'm sure if you dig, I'm sure you find it, because when I was moving, I found a bunch of those mini cassettes that you needed to put into the VHS adapter.
Yep.
So I'm sure I have footage, right? And then I found albums of
just
the
old
tours
stuff.
and stuff like that, right? So
and it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's really cool to see what's the same and what's different.
Yeah.
I mean, we ran through the early 2000s. I think for me, the 98 to early 2002, maybe up to 2006, somewhere in that range, give or take.
That was the fun.
That was it.
That was fun.
That was it.
Right? I think that's what everyone's calling right now the golden era, right?
Yeah.
So, I love that. I mean, that's what my car was based off
100%.
Right? Flipping through import tuner, and it was I want to get into a magazine, right?
Yep.
Fortunate for me, I was able to get that car in a couple magazines. And it's funny because when I bring that car out now, right? Wait, was this the car that was in the magazine?
Yes.
And right? And then, and it's wait, I remember this car from back in the day, right? And then all the new people are
all the new people don't understand
they don't
it.
know
Now some of them appreciate it because they appreciate, it's kind of as we were younger, the previous generation, they were all into muscle cars. They were into that. That's what they came up doing. So there was still, when we were younger, I still liked muscle cars when I was younger, and then I crossed over to more of the JDM and stuff because that was more my style.
Right.
But I still had that appreciation for the older stuff. I still had that appreciation for those builds.
Right. So that brings me up to my next point, right? So I'm kind of jumping ahead in the timeline here, but 2007, right? That's when things started to change. 6, 7, right?
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Change, right? So I started losing, which I was fine because I had enough trophies with that car, and people were really starting to call it rice, right? Rice,
yes.
Right? And I'm
for a while, that's exactly.
So I was that's fine. So I eventually put it away, and then started to build my next build, which was a 2006 Lexus IS350.
Okay.
The way I built that car is totally opposite than the way I built the Civic. But had I not done the Civic, the Lexus wouldn't look the way that it did, right? Because I had this, now I want to do a cleaner build, right?
Yeah.
But to me, right, back to what you were saying, the hot rodders, right, did their thing. They were doing body conversions. They were doing tuck motors. They were doing all this stuff, right? And we just incorporated that into what we were doing with the Hondas, right? So for even now, when people try to kind of pretend like body conversions or that whole golden era didn't happen, it kind of like pisses me off because it's like you're like,
no, this is what we came up. This is history.
This is history.
Yeah, this is what got us to here.
So it's like when you're saying like, oh, or that's rice, or they're trying to kind of like erase that part. And it's like, this is a very important part of our culture, of our community, right? Like, let's not forget about this, right? Because we had that, you guys now say, oh, we don't want that. And so now you have what you have now.
Well, it pushed the industry.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I love is that it's continued. You know, okay, we referenced the movie came out, that pushed, okay, and that had that push, and then we had a little change, we had a little adjustment, we did a bunch of body mods, and then what started to happen is we had a lot of performance companies come out with really high quality parts that were affordable and that we could get our hands on, okay, because before it was Japan,
right,
and that was it, and it was like, well, how do I get it? Well, you pay for an interpreter to get on the phone, to then order something, to wait 6 or 8 months or a year for a body kit to come in.
Right.
You know, like that BN kit.
Right.
That if you wanted a BN kit like that.
Anything from Veilside.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah, anything from Veilside.
That's exactly. So then we started getting some other like older OGs like like Bulletproof and like them that started bringing stuff
even
in.
Before then,
Veilside
opened up Veilside USA.
Yep.
Right, like a lot of HKS was HKS USA. Like they had a USA headquarters, which over time they ended up closing. But at least it was here in the US.
But then you could get some.
A little bit faster.
Yeah, a little.
Right?
a little. But you also had somebody that you could go to order it.
Right.
Which was different. So then, that starts moving us to where. Not even to where we are now, but getting us ahead to then you get, like you were saying, wire tucks. Okay, so now you get harnesses. You weren't having to build harnesses from scratch. So you get harnesses, you get other things underneath. You were, people were cleaning up the engine bays. They were filling it in. They were painting, on the East Coast we paint. We always talk about that. You get that. You get higher quality lighting. Okay, you get actually DOT approved lighting, or you'd import you'd import the JDM stuff, but you could actually get it. So all of those started to come about. Interior was the same way. They started.
Yeah, yes and no, right? Because some people, they don't even do it, right? Some people don't even do interior anymore.
Well, that's true.
Right? But, I mean, the ones that still do it, I think they took it up a level. So, on my Civic, a lot of parts are painted. I always say, hey, I have that red and black weave carbon fiber headliner, which is, I'm proud of that, right? Because you don't see that, right? Yeah. But I hate that it's on top, so no one actually gets to see it.
Yeah, nobody looks up.
But it gets lost,
very rarely.
right?
Yeah.
But, my back seat is a black and red vinyl, right? Not leather, but black and red vinyl. We wrap some, other pieces in ultra leather, right? But what I like now is a lot of people are doing the suede with the stitching.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like I think that's clean, right?
Yeah.
I think that's clean until I saw the new stick-on one. You seen that?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, why they gotta ruin that, right? But I mean, I think when people do interiors now, they're not doing black and red vinyl anymore, right? That's out. No. I think it's doing a lot more cleaner, especially with the dual stitch. I like that. Like, I think that's
that's one of those arts that I think outside of like even the still older muscle car era, I think it's kind of lost because we're really not doing it. And I don't know. I think we're kind of missing out a little bit.
It is.
But the show scene is different.
So the show scene is definitely different, right?
The show scene is different.
So I've been competing for 20 years, right? And my crew, we have a standard. Right, and it's like you got to hit every aspect of it, right? Like it's not it's the wheels, it's the body kit, it's the performance. If it's a race build, you don't need stereo, right? But it's building the car inside out. Like I want everything that can be touched to be touched. Yeah. And when you look at some other car crews out there, it's just like either shortcuts or they don't do stereo, they don't believe in stereo. Rep parts, certain things like that, right? So. Basically on my crew, like you see it, right? BN Sports, Rocket Bunny, Bride, even in the past, like I had people ask me like, hey, how do I join your team? Yeah. And again, everyone's build is everyone's build. I got a lot of heat for criticizing cars, right? And, you know, it comes with the territory, but hey, you know, like at the end of the day, man, like I love everyone's build.
Right.
Like I want people to build. It doesn't matter what I think, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm like, yo, it doesn't matter what I think. It's your build. I'm not going to knock your build. This is what you envision.
Yep.
This is what your dream.
Yeah.
Like, I know how hard it was for me to build what I built because it was my dream. I'm not going to take anything away from your dream, but if you're going to ask me, I'm going to tell you, right?
Then that's the thing. If,
Right.
if you're going to ask, here's the critique.
Here's the critique.
Here's the critique.
Right. So, you know, again, it'll be like, hey, like, you know, to rock with me, it's like, hey, you got Recaros, like, can we up the rarity in the seat? You know what I mean? Or something similar to that, right? Like, here's this or here's that. It's like, oh, you know what? Everyone's rocking this top fuel intake. Like, how about, you know, is ARC still available? Like, can you source one of those out?
Yep.
Something like that. Like, hey, get something that's a little bit more, like, rare, right?
Especially on the show side.
Right.
You know, now it's different. If you got a daily driver and you're just a runner, you know, and it's what you want to put on it, great. Right. Now, there's a difference when you take it to an event,
right,
and you're showing to compete.
And
when you go to compete,
yeah,
then that's different.
Right.
That's the critique.
Right. So my crew, we go to compete.
Yes.
Like, don't get it twisted. So
yeah.
And that's what I see, right? So like a lot of people ask me, like, you know, like, why is your team always like winning, right? And it's like, we go to compete.
Yeah.
Not only that, but our average age is like, we're in our 30s and 40s, right? Like, we're older, right? I get it. I've been there like 20 years ago when, like I said at the beginning of the video, who would have known that I started this team with 5 guys where we were just doing it as a hobby, and then we started to compete, and then we were like, just because we were so competitive, we always wanted to win, and to always take home trophies, we're like, oh, like, this is something we're proud of.
Yep.
And then to see that, you know, there weren't JDM-inspired show cars that many, right? Because back then it was all body chop cars.
Yeah.
So when you get like that subculture of JDM styled, then, you know, you start attracting these people from the other places. Because we were traveling down the East Coast. We were doing it in the summer, right? Because we have seasons. So our show
it's crazy.
in May.
It's crazy.
And it ends at September, right? So we were doing like 30 shows from May to September. Like back-to-back weekends, right? Like boom, 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 boom. We were doing that for years, and so that's how we were able to get such a large roster, right? And it's crazy because there are guys on my team now that are younger brothers of older members.
Oh, really?
Right.
That's incredible.
Right. So I'm just like, and I'm still doing it, right? So out of the original 5 that started the crew, I'm the last one.
Okay.
Right? I'm the last one. So, but I treat it like it was my firstborn. You know what I mean? Something that you started and you never would believe that would end up what it is today, right? Like, we had cars that, you know, for like a 3-4 year span, I had a car that was in a feature magazine every month. So every month I would go to town.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And that's incredible. So like, but again, that is when you're at that level. Okay, and that's very much different.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not like oh, we just show up to hang out. No, it's showing to compete.
To compete.
And the other thing is, man, you guys are crazy in a good way. Okay, because like literally, you know, that car might last the season that way. It might get traded, you know, swapped out a little bit halfway through the season. But on our down season on the East Coast, when winter starts to hit, that car goes in the shop, and sometimes they're fully blown out, you know, and like redone.
Yeah.
Sometimes they make a second year, but it really depends.
Yeah.
A lot of times I would see them when they would go to convert to the second year, they would change the paint.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? For that second year, they would change the paint.
Because that was our thing, right? Because it was like, if you're going to redo something, you want us to just change the color too, because then it's like a totally new build. But another thing behind that was that our goal was to be in the magazine, right? We want cover Super Street. We want cover Tuner. We want cover of this, that, right?
Yeah.
One of the things was, hey, if it's already been shot, it's not going to.
No, it's not going to go back up there.
It's not going to go back into another magazine. No. So what do? We change the kit. We change the arrow.
Yep.
You know, we tweak this, change the wheels, and then change the color of the car.
Yeah.
Now it's going on the cover.
Now it'll go again.
Right? So,
but it looks like a different car.
It looks like a different car.
But it's the same car.
It's the same
but
car.
It's not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
2.0, right?
Yeah.
2.0, right?
Yeah.
So I've had a lot of cars that are like, 5.0, right? But
yeah.
But they're still like, I mean, I hate the term catalog cars, but some catalog cars done right.
Oh yeah.
They're like my good friend that I've known for years, Chris Rios. He's the owner of the Lethal Integra, so it's a gold DC2 full Mugen, right?
Yes.
I only bug him to come out every 3 years, right? Because it keeps that car, like, when people see it, like, oh wow,
It's fresh.
Right,
It's
fresh.
Yeah,
right?
it's not
Right.
worn out where like
Right.
you're
We
seeing
see
it
it
at
all the
8
time.
events each
Right.
year, and it's
Right.
like, but again, and I like the term catalog car, and again, it's not a knock on it. It really
No, it's
isn't,
not.
because
when it's done right.
oh yeah, I mean I definitely know both coasts. You know both coasts because you've been doing this so long. And there's always an argument of East Coast, West Coast, who builds what. I would love for everybody to meet in Texas or something, and like just 1 year and line up everything, because on both sides
There's
the
plus and minus,
builds are
right.
incredible. Okay, and then there's personalities.
Right.
Okay, and it's even on the East Coast, that's one of the things that's fun, that, if you're in Florida, if you come up and you're in the Carolinas, if you come up and you're in Virginia, if you go up further and you're, in Connecticut or Massachusetts, they each kind of have their own flavor.
Yeah.
They really do.
It's funny. So if you start north and come down, you really see it.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And with all the stops, you really see it, right?
Yeah.
Like you see it like real JDM up north.
Yep.
Then when you come through Jersey, it's like kind of flashy, loud.
Yeah.
Come back down through the DMV, it's more JDM, right? And then as you go south, then it gets south.
Well, it does,
Yeah.
and you get big turbos.
Yep,
You get like,
yep.
and I mean, it also there's a big thing with each state and
Yes.
how strict each state is. Okay,
Right.
and that's one of the things that's a love-hate for me in SoCal or in California.
Restrictions are real tight.
Oh,
real
it's
tight over there.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, there's really nothing you can do to the car, and they're trying to get to the point where all you can drive is an EV, okay? And I mean, we're all going to get there, okay? Okay. Have you seen what Rywire's doing
Yeah.
on the EG and the EK?
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Amazing.
That is okay. So
that's innovative, right? Like
100%, and I'll never knock that. Okay,
Yeah.
but okay. So if you guys don't know, anything that I see that's innovative like that, I'm not going to knock.
Of course not.
It's
the first of its
an
kind, like-
advancement of where we're going to all end up in one day. Okay, if you guys haven't seen it, it's super cool. He's got an EV powered EG. I was just watching the EK that he's throwing a full Tesla all-wheel drive, front and rear motor in, and batteries in an EK.
Right.
And again, it's an advancement of what we're doing. Okay, it's hard not to knock the EVs. Because we all come from combustion engines. We all like that sound. We all like that visceral feel of revving it out. Especially the Hondas 9, 10K.
Yep.
That was always the challenge. Can I get to 9? Can I get to 10 and not blow it up? But can I get to 10?
Right.
But EV is where it's going to go eventually.
Eventually.
Okay, eventually, and then all of us are going to hold on to our Hondas or whatever it happens to be that we're in for as long as we can, just like the muscle cars have done.
Exactly.
Okay, and then it's just going to progress over. The muscle cars will eventually fade away. They'll be there, but their numbers 20 years from now.
Yeah.
There's not going to be
less.
that many chassis left.
Yeah.
They're going to be in collections. They're going to be in museums. For good or bad at that point. It's still history. But it's going to rotate over to our golden era.
Right.
And our golden era is going to be, I'm sorry, but what's what's trying to be kept alive with them that's dwindling a little bit because that's a generational thing.
Not only that, but I mean, they're older, so it's harder for for them. Like YouTube's a big thing now, right? So it's harder for them to get someone on YouTube to kind of bring that back to life, right? So one of my things was, when I brought the Civic back out, I told you this story before in another video, but just real quick. So my good friend Daniel died, which he's right here at the shop. We have him right here.
Always.
He passed away unexpectedly. His parents gave the shop his Honda Accord. We finished it. We debuted it at Honda Day. While that happened, the guys here knew that I had my Civic still. They said, hey, you should bring it out, display it next to Daniel. Let's go together. Sure, I got you. And then what started as a tribute to Daniel, like the response I got at that show, and I was parked in the back. Right, I was parked way back. I was just like, "Hey, this is for Daniel, right? This is not me.
Yeah, this isn't for my car. Yeah, exactly."
But just the response I got from all the old people are like, "Oh my god!" And all the new kids are like, "What is it?" Like, it was crazy. Yeah. So based on that, I was like, "Hey, I'm going to take this car on tour to show people how we used to build cars back in the day."
Yeah.
Right, and like I don't care. Like at that point, I was like, I don't care if it wins or not, right? Because I have enough individual trophies,
right?
Where I'm like, I don't care. I just want people to see it.
Yep.
Right. And we would take it to shows, and I've been getting that response all year, right? Like, oh my God, like, was this car that was this in this magazine? Da, da, da. And then, I had never done a Honda Day, so I mean, it won there, and I was like, cool, I got a Honda Day trophy. Like, I always wanted one of these, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then I saw you in Connecticut. I mean, that I would never go to that event, just because I wasn't into Hondas anymore.
Right.
But because I had brought that car out this year, I went. Right, so we went there to a all Honda event, and those are the guys that really appreciate that car.
100%.
Yeah.
And you had, I don't know who you paid to get that position at that event, okay? But you were literally front and center for that location.
So I think the owner and promoter of that event, he knew about the car.
Oh, okay.
And that's
awesome.
And he knew that what I was doing was I was bringing this car back out to show people how we used to do cars back in the day, right?
Yeah.
And then especially at a all Honda event, like again, we went there, we were both there, and it was like, again, catalog cars, right? I mean, how many, like Type R Alley, how many of them were like the same, right?
Yeah,
no knock on it, but to see something different.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And then it's like, wait, but how different is that?
Yeah.
I built that car 20 years ago.
Yes.
Right? And it's still here, right?
Yes.
So now it's, even before that, I would take it to other events, and I won a lot in that car. I know what it felt like. I started to bring my son, who's 10 years old, and I would register the car under his name.
Oh, the next generation.
Right. So if the car won, they would call his name up.
Oh.
So at an event over here in Maryland, the car won Best of Show, and they called his name. He went up, and I was behind him when they called it. And so it was the weirdest feeling, because I was like, I'm like looking at my younger version of myself.
That was like you going up there,
going up there. So now I'm reliving it through him.
Right.
Right. And he's all about cars, right? So now I'm like, everything that like I tell you about that you probably don't understand, like you are now living it.
Yeah.
Like, so that was crazy. So again, I started off with, hey, this is a tribute to Daniel. Then it was, hey, I want to bring this car out so people can see it, right? Like what we used to build cars, which is still the mission.
Yeah, yeah.
Now it was like, hey, like reliving the experiences with my son.
Yep.
And then now it's I think it's gotten even more, right? Because when I got back, I went to vacation in LA over the summer. When I got back, I was really deciding on, should I bring the car to WeekFest or not?
Okay.
And I had talked to certain individuals throughout the year, and I was worried about what the California judges would say about my car.
Yeah.
And just because it took me forever to build it, this car has sentimental value for me, right? And again, when people would call it rice before, I took it to heart, and eventually that's what made me.
That's what makes you pull it away. Yeah,
right,
exactly.
That's what put it away. So I didn't want them to see it and be like, well, this is why I got put away, right?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
That's the worst thing. But I was talking to certain individuals on the East Coast, and they're like, this car is in this area, like this car is what it's all about.
Yes.
Like it needs to be seen.
Yes.
You need to take it there. And I talked to another guy, and he's like, do you know that they actually have an award for 90s car of the festival? And I'm like, what? Really?
Oh, done.
And he was like, this is right up the alley, bro.
Yes,
like
100%.
This is your award. If you
100%.
if you don't bring the car, like you're giving that award away.
Yeah.
And if anyone knows, Weekfest is like the Super Bowl of car shows.
It is,
right? Like
100%.
To obtain one of those awards is very difficult.
Yeah.
Right? I've been doing their event for, I want to say 8-10 years, ever since they brought it to the East Coast. With my Lexus, I won once. 1 out of 10, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've never been able to win again. Probably because freaking I brought that damn SCBN Sports wide body car in my team, so I probably can't beat that. That might be part of the reason.
Yeah.
But then,
that one's hard to beat though. That one.
But then, I brought the car. They saw it. They loved it. And they gave nothing but positive remarks about it, even encouraging me not to redo it. They're saying, hey, this is the way it was. And part of the reason why I brought it out, one of the guys on my team he told me 3 years ago to bring the car back out. He's like, it's time to bring it back out. Yeah. And I was like, not yet. And then Weekfest last year, I think they brought LJ Garcia's hatchback out. Oh. That's when I knew it was time to come back.
And what I loved about that car, was they're like, oh, we found it. Oh, we saved it basically, right? When they brought it out and they put it at the show.
You were there, yeah?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You happen to have one of the pins that they gave out at that show?
No, I didn't get it. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll ask. But no, they didn't do anything to it.
Right, they showed it as is.
Yeah, like it was like, it had like Lexan windows, and the windows were all kind of like faded, because it does. Over time, it just kind of scuffs, I guess is the best way of putting it. So it still had those. The kit was still there, but it wasn't perfect. And you could see where like, the molding was starting to crack and run. It had some, I want to say down the fender or something. I forget what it was, and it was kind of like a spider crack. But they had it on display, and the first thing that hit my mind when I saw it was it on the cover. Mm-hmm. And it was
one of the most iconic magazines, right? It was when the car was blue.
Yep.
Had Francine D.
Oh yeah.
On the cover, right? Import tuner. I think it was issue number 2. No, issue number 1 was the Remix Twins and a CRX, I believe. Number 2 was that feels.
I used to have all of them, and I lost them over the days. I moved too many times. I used to have them, but I don't know if it was as much the car or her, the combination. But that combination on that cover. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'll see if I can find it. I'll see if I can flash it up there for you guys. But yeah, that's exactly what I saw when I saw the car there, and I was like, wow. And then Joey from the Chronicles, he was the one that and he said, I'm not gonna redo this car. He's like, the way the car is, we're just gonna keep it, as like a time capsule,
right?
And that's what's so cool about it.
Yeah.
That's again what's so cool about yours.
Right. So I don't want to say that I'm comparable to LJ, right? LJ is.
But that's again the golden era of those cars being built. It's amazing that they survived that long.
Yes.
Okay, especially like full custom ones.
Right.
Okay, it's different. It's different if you got an OEM car and you tuck that thing away. You've never driven it. But this is a car that went up and down the coast doing shows and everything else,
So it was driven. So just so you know, it was driven to all those shows.
Yeah.
It wasn't until this year that it was on the trailer.
Yeah.
Right? And that's just because, who knows? Like that car, I don't want to be driving it 3 hours to Jersey, 4 hours to Jersey, and it break down, right?
So. And it did its time.
Yeah.
Saying that in the nicest way possible. It put in its work.
Yep.
Okay, so there's nothing wrong with it being trailered right now. Okay,
but back then I was always like against trailers. Like,
that was all. I mean, that's why they were called trailer queens, and we all kind of made fun of them when they would show up, and they're like, "Cool, you got a show car. Oh, how'd it get here? Oh, you got an enclosed. Oh, you spent money on that enclosed to get it up here." And you're like, "Oh, okay, yeah. That's why his paint looks so good. He never drives it."
I think now that I'm older, now I understand it. Right now, back then I didn't understand it. Right?
Nah.
Right? Because I used to blue tape my car.
Oh yeah.
Right? But now those builds were so extravagant, so expensive. They're protecting their investment.
They are,
right?
They are, and it's
really you don't think about that, right? At that time,
not at that time.
You're in compete mode, right? You're not thinking about that.
I had a buddy of mine and this was, we were on one of the Nopi tours, and he had, man, I want to say it was a bug eye. I can't remember which STI. I want to say it was a bug eye, converted. He had, you know, some of the rally stuff like the flap on the roof and stuff like that. But he had a full custom painted, full custom, hardcore custom, okay? Like multi-color, multi-design, everything else, right? Basically what you would do is a wrap right now, okay? Because most people don't, outside of like the lowrider community, you don't really do paint like that anymore. So anyways, we were driving down and there was retread off a tractor trailer, a tire in the middle of one of the lanes, and all of us missed it except for him.
I've had a story like that before.
So we ended up, you know, coming down the rest. You know, we all made the overnight stop. We all cried about the car and everything else, but literally the conversation we had when we were all around, you know, he had the bumper pulled off and everything else when we were showing it. He's like, yeah, I already talked to my paint guy. I already did this. Now this is 20 years ago at this point, right? At that time, he's like, I already talked to my paint guy. Yeah, it's going to cost me about $10K. And this is 20 years ago. To then have to put another $10K into your paint. Like, yeah, a trailer makes sense. But we all drove them.
What was the name of your friend? Do you remember?
Oh, I can't remember.
Was his name Alex by any chance?
He was a real big dude. So that was the easiest way to remember. He was like 6 foot something, but he was big.
Okay.
And then at the time, and I'd be amazed if anybody comments and you get this. At the time, he had a girlfriend that was like this big.
We don't.
Okay, but she also drove a Subaru, so they had like the his and her type of Subarus. Yeah. But yeah, so if anybody knows who that is, drop the name in there. I mean, I'd be amazed. I can't remember it. It's been 20-something years.
No, it's funny because the story sounds familiar to something that happened to one of my members that owns a bug eye, which is probably one of the most well-known bug eyes now. Alex Wicken, who owns Performance Auto Gallery, he had a red one. Well, it was purple on the cover import tuner.
Okay.
He redid it, right-hand drive, tubed the whole engine bay. He was the first car that I had seen that put his car on air jacks. Yeah. Right. So he was on air jacks and JDM, everything. Like, I'm so blessed to have had him on my team to help kind of extend the team. Right. Yeah. So but that's probably one of the baddest builds I've ever seen. So it sounds very similar.
It's similar. Right? It's similar. Yeah, it definitely is. They probably compete against each other. Yeah. They probably know each other, honestly. But yeah, so then, I mean, if we work ourselves back to the timeline that we kind of jumped around on. So we had our golden era, okay? Mm-hmm. And we're kind of coming back around to it. But what's funny to me is it's not with the new cars. It's still with that golden era of cars. And now a lot of it is the older guys, okay, or slightly older, like us. But they're then getting back into them, okay. Some of them have moved away a little bit, or they had families, they did whatever they did, right? But now they're like, I want to get back into it. So they either get back into a right-hand drive, because they can afford a right-hand drive now, and oh man, we can import all the good stuff right now. Yep. What's open right now for us to import in is incredible.
We were dreaming about that.
Oh, right? I mean, we've been waiting.
S15, R34, 33,
all the G. Okay, so I came up, again with Gran Turismo, but I came up with like the hot version videos. Okay, so the old hot version videos. I would do those, and it was all, either the toge runs or they would lap them around scuba, right? And it was, there was one, the 10,000 RPM one. There was one, I think they said 11,000 if I remember correctly, but there was a 10,000 RPM one. And they would bring out, like some some factory options, and then they would bring out the tuned options.
Right. Oh yeah.
And they would run all the tuned options.
Yeah, I remember that.
So like Jay's and all of them would come out.
Right.
You know, Spoon would bring them out, and you know they would explain the car. So they'd have the EK. You know,
Did you understand
and
any
Spoon.
of it though?
No, none of it. No, and they would point, and they had the little finger, and they had the little finger, and they would point, and you know, DK had the little hammer, and he would hit the girl with the hammer, you know, the little squeaky hammer. I don't know. I still remember all those, but those cars in those videos are now what's available to us.
It's awesome.
I mean, so the.
And the crazy part is we can afford them, right? Like,
and that's the thing that's awesome about them. So now the industry's got this turn where, you know, like you said, it had this weird generation from like, I don't know, like 2010 to 2020. You know, 2020, like it was just kind of
Right.
There were a lot of cars. There were still good cars. Okay, you guys don't kill me in the comments on that. There were still good cars. Okay, but it was just kind of And a lot of the manufacturers were okay, I'm sorry, but like
I think that came with the car, right? Because
yeah,
I think from the manufacturer of the vehicles,
yes,
they weren't really putting anything out.
No, they were all boring. They
right?
were all kind of meh.
So what is the aftermarket manufacturer supposed to do?
They try,
right?
You know, they try, but now Toyota, all their GR line and everything else they're doing, you guys will hear me say this every time. Everything they're making right now for the enthusiast is incredible to me. Okay,
I agree.
So you have your BRZ, your 8.6, whatever you want to name it. No matter what I call it, I get it wrong. Okay, but you have that. That is an awesome entry level. For sure. Rear wheel drive. Okay, sure. That is arguably the replacement of like an S2000. In my opinion, okay? It is
keep in mind, S2000 wasn't meant to be what we see it as today.
Yeah.
You remember that, right?
Yeah.
Because S2000 came out to compete with Mercedes SLK 230 Roadster and the BMW the Z3, right? Like,
right.
So they were,
and it was an expensive car,
right?
Like it was a high-end car. It wasn't like an entry-level car,
right? And now you see like people that build it, they're like track race style, right?
Track. Oh right. Yeah, mine was.
Right. So it's like, holy crap! Like that car wasn't made to do that.
No, it was a luxury car for like almost like the midlife crisis guy.
Right, yeah.
Like really. That's you know, that's what it was. So, but now we've finally gotten back to this where Toyota's built that. That is an entry level car for most people. You know, price-wise. Yeah. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Now, that car can take someone as far as they want to go. It does everything. Yeah. My nephew's staticked out 2 of them already. I mean, hey, more power to him. I have no idea how he gets up and down the driveway, okay? And you can comment down below how many lips you've blown out on that car. One of these days. I know you want to move to BMW, but so that.
He won't want to move BMW once he gets the price tag on that one.
I know.
Them lips.
I warned him. Okay, but like, that's what he wants to upgrade.
Even the rep lips on BMWs are expensive.
even the cheap like not real carbon ones. So you have the 8.6. You move up from the 8.6 if you want the all-wheel drive. Okay, the non-GR Corolla. I think they're killing that. I think Toyota introducing the non-GR Corolla, everybody's stancing those, everybody's bagging them. I mean, those cars are super popular.
You know what it reminds me of, man? It reminds me of, remember when Scion first came out, right? XB,
yes.
XA, we got one for you, right?
Yeah.
TC, right? Like, we got one for you, like pick your style, right? So,
and it was that price too. And it was
funny. Scion is Toyota.
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah, Scion I think was a huge move for them.
Huge
move. They're like, we have our luxury brand. You know what? We're going to do an entry-level tuner brand.
Yeah.
And it was more tuner related.
Smart.
Yeah, so they did great with that. So you have the Corolla, then you have the GR. The GR4, I don't know why it doesn't have more love. That car is incredible for what it'll do. If you want all-wheel drive, if you want something nuts. You have the Supra. I'm sorry, that Supra will do anything you want it to do. Okay?
That thing is crazy.
Okay?
That thing is crazy.
And then they listened, and they made a manual.
Right.
Okay? Which I mean, they
let's see if they really listened.
yeah.
I'm waiting for the target top.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
That would be...
If they really listen...
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. So, the Supra does absolutely everything you want it to do. Toyota in just those cars right there, I mean, absolutely killed it. Okay? Honda finally, we had that whole gap where...
Yep. They could have took advantage of it. Like, they could have took some...
They lost. And I mean, it was Honda Japan. Like, and you guys, we know we love Honda, okay? But they put out, we're just going to make an economy car. We're just going to produce an A to B car, basically.
That's crazy.
They got rid of all their enthusiasts, all their backing and everything else, and then they finally started coming back around, okay? So they finally were like, oh, let's re-release the Type R. Okay, cool. Why did they ever stop it?
I know.
Why?
Right?
Okay, so, the FK8 is super popular. It took a little bit of love. It took me a little bit to like it.
FL5, same thing.
FL5,
Yeah.
I like the style of the FL5 faster than I like the FK. The FK took me a while. Like, it was really angular. It was really like, it was almost like the EP3.
So EP3, FK8, and EK9. Remember EK9 when it first came out without lips, kit, anything? EK9 plain, right? It was like
you're
big
what am I
headlight,
supposed
right?
to do? Yeah,
coming from an EG, right?
Oh yeah,
to like big headlight,
huge like fishbowl headlight.
Right,
yeah,
right. But then once you put a Jay's Racing lip or Charge Speed lip on it, and Max Boost came out. Remember that? And
oh, Max Boost,
right?
yeah.
And it was like, eyelid, on it. It's like, oh wow, like right.
You're like, wait, that looks good.
Yeah, now it looks good, right?
Yeah,
I think give it a little time, right? FK, same thing, right? So. Again, I knock on it, right? Oh, how many Mugen FK8s can I see?
Yep.
How many white ones?
Varus kits, everything else,
right? And it's real rare because when you're in that selection, and everyone's got the same thing, it's like, what do you do to be different, right? So I actually, when I went to a show, I was like, there was a whole row of them, and then I saw a Jay's Racing one, and I'm like, it just looked so different.
Yes.
Just because it was a different kit.
Yes.
Right? And it was just like, wow. Like,
I saw one at it was LA, like the USDM show or one of the big Honda shows, and I was walking down the run and I was like, cool, FK8, and then I was like, wait, and it was a red one.
Yeah.
It was a red one, and I was like, and I paused and I was like, wait, this isn't, what kit is this? And I had to look at it for a second. I was like, it doesn't look like any of those. And I looked at it and I was like, oh, that's Jay's.
Yeah.
And it did. It really stood out from the rest of them. I was super impressed with that. But again, like it's hard because there's only so many. And right now, the way things are being built, we're not doing that heavy custom.
Right.
Okay, so like you said, it's
Which is
more
okay.
of a catalog.
Which
it's
is
okay.
It's okay.
I'm not knocking it. But this current theme and this current generation that we're running through is very bolt-on, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Yeah, I don't mean that in a bad way. Okay, it's like you said, it's a Varus, it's a Jay's, it's a Spoon, it's a Mugen. Now, what's really impressive is when the person does their catalog, and they literally have everything, and it's like, wow. Like one, they spent a lot of money. But two, it's like, hey, that's actually really impressive that you're able to stay within that brand, and it still looks this good. It still does, everything.
Yeah, but when you do that, right? So like, I always think like you got to do like all of it, right? Like even if
everything,
even if it has like the pinstriping, the decal,
everything,
like, you got to do it.
It has to be. If you're gonna go, I would say 3/4 of the way towards Spoon or 3/4 of the way towards one of those brands. You have to go the whole. You have to go the whole. You have to be doing the cluster. You have to be doing the signatures. You got to have your signature. You got to have your signature on the dash.
So
you got to have your signature on the.
You could say that because you go to auto salon, right? So like you could say that, but imagine some of us that never been or can't afford to go, it's like, well, how am I going to get my clusters on? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, but you get to go, so you're one of the lucky few.
Well, and we get lucky because on the West Coast, we get them to come out a couple times, and there's literally a line of 1,000 people, and they bring. Like they literally bolt it off their car, and they come up, and they come up. Yeah, you know. So like, what was it? It was like Wall, New Jersey last month when they were doing the drift event. DK was there.
Got you.
And he was doing signatures.
Right.
And that's one of those ones where it's like you don't get to see him very often, you know. So the fact that he was doing signatures, you know, that's a one-off for probably almost everybody out here on the East Coast. Like. Like nobody else is going to see them, or you know, you get lucky enough to go to Japan. You know, that's one of the things I really like. I'm blessed about is that. Again, I'm going to go in January. I'm already working on my flights. I've basically turned it into a tour group at this point because I have a group of guys that typically go with me now, or they'll reach out and they're like, oh, are you going to Tokyo Auto Salon again? I'm like, yeah, of course I'm going to Tokyo Auto Salon.
Right.
Like it's almost like SEMA for us here, okay? But you know, it's Japan's version of that. And then now what I've found is I started taking people that they almost all have the exact same comment to me. They go, oh, Japan just seems too hard. Japan just seems too expensive. A lot of times I hear too expensive. Now from the West Coast, now granted my flight is twice as much from the East Coast, but from the West Coast, I could do Tokyo Auto Salon like on a budget. You guys, okay, you guys don't quote me right now, okay? So like this last year I did it. I was able to do Tokyo Auto Salon for the craziness of that week. Okay, from the West Coast, flight, stay. I can't count the rental car because I spent a lot of money on the rental car, but I could do it all for under $2,000.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. So what happens is that's the look I get from the guys that want to go with me, and they're like, "Well, what do you mean?" And I'm like, "Look, if you're on a super strict budget." I was like, I could probably make it happen from the West Coast for you for like $1,800 and that's everything. That's everything, okay? Now, what typically happens, and as you guys know, like I'll run and I'll rent fun cars. Okay, so that blows a lot of my budget.
Oh, of course.
Okay, so now I can rent.
But then it wouldn't be any fun, right?
Yeah. So like, I mean, I can go out there, I can rent like say an EK9 or like I rented the DC5 last time, or even like the NA Miata. It depends on who's going with me, right? Or I did the Nismo 350. What else did I? Oh, the last time I did FD2, Civic Type R, which that one was actually really interesting to me because I really like the way it looks. Mm-hmm. So I was like, let me drive it and see if I really, because we're almost getting to that point where I could store one and then bring it over because we're getting kind of close on that one too. But a lot of those cars, some of them I can do for like under $200 a day, which isn't bad.
Not bad.
And then what happens is on top of that, you have 2-3 guys that go with you. You know, you can fit 4 people in a car, you know, unless we rent a van. But, you know, you fit, 2, 3, 4 people in a car. Then you split it. And then your cost really isn't bad. The cost gets bad is when everybody goes, oh, I want to get my own rental car. You're like, well, you're on your own.
Yeah.
But so like now I'm running budget right now for the East Coast. And my flights are about twice that amount.
Yeah.
You know, and I just haven't been able to find. But off the West Coast, if you guys pay attention, 6 months out from Tokyo Auto Salon, you could, I think the last 4 or 5 times I went, my tickets were under $650 round trip to Tokyo, which is great. You know, that's cheap. This last year I went, I was super, like, I was on my flights every day paying attention, and I was able to get a round trip ticket. Okay, now no check baggage, okay? So like you gotta throw it in the backpack and go, okay? No check baggage and no meals. So I had to bring my own meals on the plane, which isn't a big deal, okay? But I got it for $500 round trip.
That's crazy.
It's ridiculous.
That's crazy.
So for everybody that thinks Japan is too far out there, there's a couple ways to do it on a budget. Okay, I've had a handful of people.
All right, sorry about that. We were talking about $500.
Yeah, so to and from Japan.
To and from
So
Japan.
you can do it on a budget. You can, okay? But the big thing that I think gets everybody after the budget is just the fear of getting around.
Yeah.
So what I've found is my last couple years I've been taking groups with me and I run them through that process. And then after that, they then feel comfortable enough. I'm like, this is how the trains work.
Right,
this is how getting around works. Look, if you want to drive, this is how driving works. And the first time out is stressful. So if the first time out is super stressful for Japan, okay? Technology is so good. Google Maps is great. Everything else, you go get a hotspot and you have service, or you have one of the cell companies that gives you service, and you're fine. Okay, you can get around just about everywhere with Google Maps. Okay, I had my guys that went with me this year, and I had them set up their IC cards, which is for like your train. It's for 7-Eleven, all of the convenience stores, and they set up their iPhones, and literally they pulled it out and like beep, and they just touched the whole. It made it so easy for them. But yeah, so like the way I feel is, for me, I waited way too long to go to Japan the first time. Okay, the very first time I waited. Now, I've told him before in the past, but we mentioned him earlier. Joey from the Chronicles, from Sticky Dill Joe is his website, okay, from the Chronicles. He was the reason that I actually went the very first time. Okay, so he was one of those guys that was going to Japan, and initially, this is way back, okay, he was doing like once, and he was only doing a blog. So like that was my only place to get photos and everything else.
Content,
and then that was my only way of getting content. And then we had a couple other like Speed Hunters or one of them that came around much later that I could get some Japan content, but I couldn't get Japan content any other way. So that was what started me getting that. I would import my hot version videos, stuff like that. But so I kept watching him go, and I was like, all right, I just need to do this. Now, the very first time I went, I had to go. We were talking about manuals and everything. I had to go with like I had to go with like paper maps and everything, and go with like guidebooks the very first time, and like literally I'd have a guidebook and I'd have to like follow the little maps. Now, everything you do it on Google Maps. It's so much easier.
Yeah.
But anyway, if you guys want to do Japan, go to Japan. Don't wait. If you have questions, just ask me. But seriously, don't wait.
Yeah.
The earlier you do it, the earlier you get that exposure. I mean, we're all car people. Not that that's all that's in Japan, because Japan's got a ton of good stuff. Yeah. But that is one of the craziest things to do. Go during Tokyo Auto Salon, or like
one of my guys actually goes almost every year.
Almost every year, right?
Almost every year, yeah.
Yeah, and it gets crazier and crazier, and it's starting to get very saturated with tourists.
Yeah.
Okay, and for the car side of things too. And I guess that's kind of one of the downsides, because they had problems at Daikoku, which I think have kind of been resolved, where it was tourist related. They were going doing burnouts, and they were doing like almost takeovers, and it was ridiculous. Like that's not what you do. But anyways, one of the last things I really wanted to talk about was that how you kind of feel about that last transition from where we were at the golden era, where we had those couple years that were okay. Now we're turning back into golden era, OEM plus. You know, we're getting a lot of the JDM cars imported, the right-hand drive imported. What do you feel, or how do you feel like the current scene is to you?
So again, the current scene, I see a lot of catalog stuff, right? I call it catalog builds.
Yep.
So that's cool, but again, like you brought up, we're starting to see a lot more of the cars that can be imported.
Yeah.
Now I want to see those cars. Can we find a C-West kit, right? Can we find a Bomex kit?
So
right?
you want to do the period correct. Bring those cars in.
Yeah.
Bring those cars in, but keep them true to that generation.
Yes.
100%. I love that.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just weird, right? Like, think about a S15, right? Like, how would it look like if you modernized it, right?
Yeah.
Again, that might be cool.
Yeah.
That might be cool, right?
Yeah.
I think they're bringing out the S15 again, right? Nissan
S15?
has some prototype out, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
that might be cool,
Yep.
right? But again, that car, can easily have, RB, swap a RB
Oh,
in that,
yeah.
right? Like
yeah, you swap the
S15,
RB in
right?
it.
So,
I mean, they got the Infinity swap. They've
Right.
got, but
the Aero, right? To me, I love
Yeah.
Aero, right?
Yeah.
So like C-West, Vertex kit, right? Like, can we get that, right? That's what I want to see, right? But, again, as a car show competitor, like, in order for these cars to come out, there's got to be a place. There's got to be a category for it, right? Because not everyone's like me where it's like, hey, I want to bring it out to show, right? Like, some people really want to compete, and they're not going to keep bringing it out, paying $80 for car entries. That's how much it is now to register a car.
Really?
Back in the day, it was like 50.
Yeah.
Okay? Now it's 80.
50 was the expensive shows.
Yeah.
The expensive events.
Now everything is 80 across the deck. Like, no matter where you go,
Okay.
right? Like, you want to show? $80. Cool. We'll pay 80, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But to pay $80 and, there's only so many events you're going to go to and not be competitive, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, create that 90s era category. Create that golden era category.
Just call it the golden era.
Yeah,
just call it the golden era category.
So, again, we start the video, I talk about, how things progress.
Yeah.
Now, I become the advocate for, hey, get this category into
100%,
events, right?
yeah.
Because not only will you see more of these builds, right? But there are guys out there like me that have our older cars, and we don't know what to do with them.
Right.
Let's just bring it, let's bring them back out.
Man, you could bring out. Oh, that would be so great.
Right.
Because you could do both left-hand driver US or JDM, and have them class separate where they don't compete against each other.
Or you throw two shows in one, modern and classic.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, you throw two shows in one, doesn't matter, right? Like, there's got to be a way. There's got to be something logistically where that can work, because car shows asking for $80 is a lot.
Yeah.
Right, but I get it, right? The venue is going to cost a lot more, blah, 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 blah. But it's like, I've been going to car shows and I've been seeing the amount of registered cars kind of dwindle down, right, for these indoor events.
Yeah.
The outdoor events is, obviously, like, we were in Connecticut and it was packed.
You're gigantic, yeah.
Right? But the indoor events, like, I've been going to some indoor events, even Weekfest this year. The back hall was like less, right? So that building, I don't know if you went 2 years ago, but it's usually packed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that one back corner,
right? It was
like
empty.
it didn't quite fill out. Not that the show was bad. The show was incredible.
Right.
Okay.
Always is. But
they always
it's
are.
Usually that event's usually fuller, right? For the only stop on the East Coast.
Yes.
Like, coming from a guy that travels up and down the East Coast, there are cars that you see every weekend.
Right.
There are cars that I only see at that event.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And that's what kind of...
and that's what brings those cars out, which makes it an incredible event.
Right.
Yeah.
But, again, you did have those cars there, but there are other cars that were missing.
Yeah.
Right? There was almost like half a hall that was kind of empty, right? So
man, I mean, we keep getting into it, but like, that's also something I've seen in SoCal. Before I came out, there were enough of the indoor events that I was kind of surprised. And we have the guys that always go out, the teams that always go out, and they were kind of making those comments too. They were like, it used to be bigger, it used to go deeper, it used to be more, and that's one of my concerns on those indoor events.
Right. So, and that's the thing, right? So I've been doing this for 20 years, right, with me and my crew, and at a certain point, we're doing 30 events, and we're like, you know what, like, we would go to events and we would come late sometimes, and then we would see people leave. Yeah. At that point, I knew we didn't have to do 30 events anymore. Like, we were winning way too much.
Yeah.
So that kind of scaled it back, and then we scaled it back even more. So now we only hit the big events. But again, the way that our cars are, we're gonna win. We're not gonna win.
Yeah.
Majority of the time, we win, right?
Yeah.
Again, I pay $80 to get the cars judged by whatever judge. It's their decision on who wins, right?
Yeah.
But it got to a point this year where I was like, man, like, I felt like it was kind of recycling where we were winning, and all you would see is like our name there, and so I was like, man, it's time to give back. So I don't know if it's ever been done before, but in Philly we did. Philly was usually one of our bigger event stops. We won both the participation award and the team quality award. Yeah. When I went up there, I was like, hey, and I whispered to the guy, I was like, hey, whoever won runner-up on this award, give it to him. Like, it's not like, I don't want to, we don't want to win. Like, whoever was second place, like, I know how hard it is for a team to win,
right?
And how much they would cherish that, right?
Yes.
Like, the amount of hard work and stuff. Like, let someone else feel that joy, right? Like, I don't want to come in and take it all. Like, so I actually gave the award back for them to reward.
So that's really interesting because, I mean, your team is at that level. That's hard because it's hard to give up the competitiveness because we're all still competitive. Even though we get older, we're still competitive, okay?
Absolutely.
But then you want the next generation, or you want that, so it's like, well, do you still go out and represent where you're going to win, okay? We're being fair about this. But you're going to win on that percentage. Do you not compete? Because that's so hard.
You know what?
Because it's so competitive.
I almost want to put out a poll. Like, how many people are waiting for me to retire? Right?
Yeah.
They're like, this dude has been here forever. Like, he just needs to go away.
Yeah.
Right? But regardless,
that's so hard.
Right. So when I look at my team, all right, it's like, we're going to compete. What do? All right, we're going to scale back the shows. We're only going to go to certain shows.
Yeah.
So certain shows we're going to be at. Right. But then it's like every couple of years, it's like you reevaluate what your mission statement is.
Yeah.
What it is that you want to do. Are you hurting? Are you helping? Right? And my goal has always been to expand the community, right?
Yes.
Because without the community, there's no this.
There's nothing.
There's no shop.
There's nothing.
There's nothing,
yeah,
right?
No, 100%.
So now, right, or the last couple of years, it's always been, hey, like, it's time to give back, right? Like, we've gained a lot from this, right? Like, we talk about the golden era. We don't even talk about sponsorships, right?
That's true.
We didn't even go over that section.
No, that's
right?
true. That's true.
Like, we didn't talk about that, but there's that. And then, now it's like, hey, how do we give back, right? And to me, again, and I think this is my growth and progression, is through seeing the enjoyment through my son. That's when I was like, man, like, all these other people that are in this event or in these events, like, not that I'm robbing them, right? Because we're competing.
No,
right?
You're not.
But it's like, how do I kind of level out the playing field? And that's how I do it, right? Like, hey, like, we're gonna give this.
Let me pull out. Yeah. Let me not.
Yeah, we're still gonna compete. Yeah. Right? But it's like, hey, like, there's such a thing as too much winning.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm like, hey, let me kind of give back, right?
Yeah.
Like, I want someone else to enjoy this feeling, and know what it feels like, because I know how hard it is, and I could only imagine competing against a guy like me.
Yeah.
Right.
And like that's the thing. You're like, oh man, they came out again. You're like, oh, I'm not gonna,
I mean, that's from your side, right? I don't see it that way.
That's my
right?
opinion. That's my opinion. You're gonna win. So like, you're like, cool, because that's what you've been doing.
I mean,
like, and I'm not knocking it.
Yeah.
Like that is, okay. So that's like saying, you take like Michael Jordan in his prime, right? And you tell him, you know what, we're just not going to play you today. Right? Like, but that doesn't work, because what happens? That is one of the most competitive people that, ever period, okay?
Yeah.
There is no argument about how competitive he is. So you go, oh, well, we're doing an Olympic team or something, but you know what? We're just going to keep you on the sideline as a coach. Like, you can't.
Yeah.
Like, you can't.
But, so, you can't, but I think, again, through growth and you find a way, right? You still represent. If you win, you win. If not, you still spread that message and try to let the other people.
They almost need to add a different category.
I mean,
they almost need to,
or they're just waiting for me to retire.
Yeah, or,
you know what I mean?
But like, but you're not going to.
I'm not, right? Because I love this. It is crazy because when COVID happened, right, everything shut down.
Yeah.
And I get this asked all the time, like, "Hey, you've been doing this for so long. What would you do if there was no car shows?" Right? And I'm just like, I don't know.
I don't know.
Like, I don't know. Like, that 1 year off COVID, I was like, this is great. It was like a break.
Yeah.
But then it just got me recharged.
But then you're like, I need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It got me recharged to go back out.
So I don't see. Okay, just my opinion. Okay. I don't see you retiring. What I see, okay, and we'll see how it goes. Okay. What I see is a handoff to the next generation.
And that's what I want.
And then you take almost a back seat to it. Okay, but you're still there.
Right.
Okay, because you're a senior figure that's always been in this, okay? So then you hand off the best you can to the next generation. Right. And then that next generation, you do your absolute best to stay back here and just kind of mentor and coach and let them do their thing. But then you watch that next generation take off.
Right.
But you still have, you still got a handful of years to go.
If we're talking about this next generation, I got a handful to go. But, at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be him, right? Like, we're talking about my son. It could be anyone, like any one of my guys.
Yeah.
Right? So, any one of my guys, they don't need to be on my team, right? They can form their own team.
They could.
And do great things, right? And I think that's what's so great about the guys that are on Emotion is that we all have the same goal, right? Which is that team award at the end of the day, right? Like, and then best of show, obviously individually is what they want, but there's no egos about it. Like, we know that we're legitimately competing against each other.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not like against me and versus the SC, who's on. Like, if he wins, we're happy for each other,
yeah,
right? There's
course.
no like,
of course, there's no animosity.
There's
there.
no animosity,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So, and I think that's awesome because at the end of the day, we all win, right? But to me, individual awards for me mean nothing because I have tons of them.
Yeah.
To me, the last award, which is the team award, means more to me than the individual award. But I think it's just great that all of every team always has their egos, right?
Yeah.
But we're all aligned where it's like the ultimate goal is to win the team award, right? And then if one of our cars wins best of show, that's just the icing on the cake.
Yeah, of course.
So I think that's and again that's competitive.
That's competitive
car show.
That's
right?
very much
It's competitive car shows, man. I mean, that's paying $80, a car to go to these events, and it's multiple events. If it was up to me, man, to make it interesting, like, Tuner Evo or some of these other events have multiple stops. Like, let's make it like F1 and NASCAR, right?
Wow,
like point series.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And then make it like a tour.
Exactly.
And do, 4 different states, 6 different states. See who makes it to the West Coast. See who trailers it to Texas.
Right, and then that might bring some of the West Coast guys out.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Right, because there's only so many events that you can hold in Cali.
Yeah,
right.
That's true.
Right, and so I think that was cool because back in the day we did have that. Right, there was a crew that was the judging association, and whatever event would pay them. I don't know what the logistics behind it was, but they were the judges for the events. They did Honda Pro Nights, and then they did a bunch of other ones.
Yeah.
And they did a point series so that at the end of the year, you could be awarded best Honda of whatever year it was. It was great. It was so competitive.
So,
I almost think we need that back.
Let me just toss this out here, okay?
Let's go. I'll retire and run that. That's what I'll do. You know what I mean? That would be something I would do. I would head that. I think that's something.
I think that's it.
Right?
I honestly do. Yeah. Like, we're going to talk about that off camera. We're going to talk about that off camera. No, I really, that would be interesting.
Right. So you asked me like shows now and shows back then or the progression, right? Like I think now when we go to shows, it's a display. It's not a competition.
Right.
It's a display. Like you go and it's like, oh, you see this and you see this and you see this.
Yeah.
It's not really competitive, right? Back in the day, it was competitive.
It was.
And creative, right?
Yes.
Because you're seeing all that. So
it was huge displays.
Right.
It was huge. Like it was like a huge,
right?
Like just show for each individual vehicle. You know what I mean?
Now it's like I've never seen. It's almost like going to like a Philly Auto Show or DC Auto Show where it's like, oh, I always wanted to see a Mugen DC5. And
then it's like, and then you get to see one, and then you get to see one. Yeah.
In real life, right? But I think like the competitive nature is like, that guy that built that DC5, all the props to you, man.
Yeah.
Like those parts aren't easy.
Yeah.
Right?
No, that's it. Yeah.
It's cool, but then when there's like 4 of them, like one here, here, it's different colors, and it's like whatever, right? But it's cool to see that, but like I want to see competitiveness. Man.
I think for the next generation, I think it's important. The catalog cars, whatever we want to call them, I think it's important for them to see them. I think it's important, even though there are 4 or 5 of them, like
4 or 5 is okay
amongst the show, right?
4 or 5 is okay.
I know. The FK,
Type R Alley, bro.
The FK, yeah, I know. Like, I was trying not to do that, but anyways, yeah, I know. I agree with you.
There was like 40 of them.
Yeah, I know.
Like, whoa.
I know.
I mean, it was cool, like, because when you went down,
it was kind of cool, though.
The concept is cool.
Yeah, like,
and not only that, but where else are they as a collective going to
be able to do like that?
Yeah,
exactly.
So that I get that.
That part
that
I like.
Part's cool.
That part I like. I actually would have liked if they color coordinated them and then switched and color coordinated and then color coordinated.
That would be cool. That would be pretty cool.
So you have, and then at that point you get to see how many like special edition yellows are there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. But anyways, I think
we got something, right?
I think
we got something brewing here.
I think that point thing is that would be really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then do an East Coast, do a West Coast, and then meet in the middle.
Something like that, right?
Meet in the middle, and then that's where the final is.
You do 4 stops west, 4 stops on the east, and then 1 stop.
And then meet in Texas.
Texas or Chicago.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Texas.
Probably Texas easier.
Probably Texas.
Yeah. You would know better, right? That trip
that's like 20 hours from SoCal, but it's doable.
Yeah.
Oh, we're gonna talk about that off camera. We're gonna talk about that off camera.
Watch someone steal the idea.
Yeah. We already gave up the idea to somebody else. All right, that's it. Yeah. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know it's kind of different than my normal run or my normal interview and everything else, but this was. We talked about this off camera. I told you this was going to be a blast.
Right.
I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as we did. Definitely history. I think we need to line up and do the audio one too. I think the audio one.
Yeah. If you guys like this, right, we could do another one. Maybe we'll put out a guideline so we're not just
maybe I don't know.
Yeah,
I drink my drink and it goes where it goes.
Yeah, but if you like this, we could do more. So we can do more.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna be done for today.
We're done for today.
You sure? I mean, we could keep talking for like 2 or 3 more hours.
No,
we probably could.
We'll do that. We'll save that for another episode, right?
Okay,
So
we'll save that for another episode. You guys, thank you for all your support. Let us know what you think. Drop all those comments. If there's something else you want to see, if there's information you want, hit us up, and we'll go from there. Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. We'll see you at the next one.